Welcome to the Hoodni's Fantasy Football Podcast. I have with me MFB,
Yes, sir. AKA Spreadsheet Slammy.
and I got BBTB,
What's good? What's good? What's good? AKA future winner, AKA bench 550, AKA get it done. What it do? Feel me?
and I'm your host, Keem. And today's episode is going to be really basic. We're just going to do a uh, draft strategies episode where we'll each kind of talk about our strategies for the draft and for this year for 2024 and see what works best for us or what we think will work best to get a win. And then we'll kind of talk about the first two rounds of a 12-man league and where we rank each player. And then that'll be it for the episode. So to start us off, I think I want to have BBTB start us off for his draft strategy this year and why that's his draft strategy.
Yes, sir. Well, so we're gonna start off with the draft strategy. Pretty much do it every single year. Won a few leagues with it. So my draft strategy pretty much is all you gotta do, fade the tight end and fade the quarterback. And I'll explain why. So every single year, the tight end, there's either one crazy good tight end, which is like a Travis Kelsey or like a Mark Andrews, and then every single tight end is all mediocre. You got the Njokus that pop off. You got the I don't even know. You pretty much have like a whatever tight end, and so those people don't really get you points. So there's so much value in the other rounds if you get those kinds of other players besides the tight end, and you can get your tight end round like 7, round 8, 9, 10, and same thing with the quarterback. There's always sleeper quarterback. Me personally, I think one of the most sleeper quarterbacks last year was Jordan Love. That dude was dropping like 20 a game in a 12 and a 14 man league. You know what I mean? So that's my strategy for the year.
Okay, but let's kind of discuss that a little bit. So you're
Hmm.
saying for the tight end, you said there's not really many tight ends. There's usually one that pops off like Travis Kelsey or Mark Andrews or something. But this year, I don't know. We have Sam Laporta, who's actually I think ranked equal to or above Travis Kelsey in some uh,
Hmm.
drafts that I've done, the mock drafts. And then you have players like you do have Mark Andrews, you do have Trey McBride, you do have who else? There's a couple of other good tight ends. We could see the real emergence of Kyle Pitts, probably not, but I mean, of those players, you don't think any of them are worth drafting in the first four rounds? None of them?
Maybe the only person realistically would just be Sam Laporta, just because of how the head coach Dan Campbell's just very aggressive and just risky on all those fourth down kind of plays. And usually like on majority of those kind of plays, the options are either literally Amon Ra or Sam Laporta. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So I maybe just Sam Laporta, but anyone else, if you're going Mark Andrews with that rotation with Isaiah Likely, I wouldn't see it.
And he only really rotated last year when he was injured, right? Yeah, I don't really think that they. Do you believe it's going to be split in terms of targets between Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, or do you think it's going to be more? Uh,
So
I think it's going to be more Mark Andrews, but what do you think?
So Mark Andrews might slightly get the edge on like let's say plays, but like what Isaiah likely showed last year, going all the way up into the AFC Championship game, that dude just put up numbers. When the team needed him, he literally like performed. So like
Yeah,
logically, like as if I'm the head coach, if I'm Harbaugh, I see Isaiah Likely's kind of worth. You know what I mean? So I feel like
yeah,
they might be split in plays, or they might just be both in the game. You know?
yeah. That makes sense. I will put one more name in there for the tight end. Trey McBride was getting a lot of end zone looks from Kyler Murray last year. And I do believe that he's going to be an end zone threat, especially because they just drafted a wide receiver, Marvin Harrison, and they don't really have anyone else on that team. So I really think that he's a good value for where he's going. I think he's going around end of round four, beginning of round five, which,
Mm.
in my opinion, I would make that pick. What do you think?
Mm, I don't know.
Are you still gonna fade him even though?
I might fade him, but I kind of want to hear Shlamy's answer right now. Shlamy, what you got for me?
So as far as the strategy with like fading tight ends,
Hmm.
I agree with BBTB that you could fade tight ends, but it's for like a more different reason.
Hmm.
And that reason being is like kind of like what Kimo was talking about. There's just a lot more tight ends this year than any other year. That's like serviceable, quote unquote,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So basically,
Right.
you could just easily say tight ends are deep, right?
True.
Right.
So pulling up my spreadsheet one time for the one time,
Yeah.
I'm looking at like, I'm looking up to week 14 because that's the regular season for fantasy, right? And outside of the top four, after the top four, it's like a drop off, right, of about 20 points, right? So let me explain the numbers, right? So number one, two, three, and four are about 157 to 143 total point range, right? And then tight end five is 128, right? Now
Yeah.
tight end
I see.
five to tight end like 11, it's 101. So you have the range 101 to 128, right?
For
So
those
that's
tight ends,
like
yeah.
pretty decent numbers, right? And that's
Right.
already 11 tight ends that you could choose from, right?
Yeah.
Like some names, like he already mentioned Trey McBride, right? We got
Right.
Taysom Hill and Joku
Right.
started picking up in the second half of the season. Dalton Kincaid, no more Diggs in Buffalo, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. True.
Kyle
True.
Pitts
True.
on a new offense, right?
Hmm.
Jake Fergie, Cole Kmet, Evan Ingram. You know what I mean? These guys are still in the same offenses, same systems.
Right.
So I think that's one reason why I would fade tight ends this year.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, okay. I think just FYI for McBride, just to go, players that are going around him are, if we go up a couple picks, James Cook, Stephon Diggs, Kenneth Walker, Malik Neighbors, Anthony Richardson, T. Higgins, Mark Andrews going right before him. And then after him, George Pickens, Alvin Kamara, Zay Flowers, C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell, Christian Kirk, and the last one I'll name off is Aaron Jones. So do you guys feel as though in that round four, late round four, early round five in a 12-man league that there's more value there than there is for that player, for that tight end, for Trey McBride?
100%. Just because I see those guys are just not randoms on the team. Those guys are meant to get the ball. Like they're
Right,
meant to get
right,
targeted. You know what I mean? So I personally think that I would rather go with that because you would get, just my opinion, more value because you got like those tier three kind of tight ends that can
right,
kind of fit that spot
right.
instead of McBride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as quarterbacks, the fading a quarterback you said as well. I feel like that's been a pretty popular ideology. Can you kind of just explain that real quick?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So basically, like, I'll be honest. If you're getting Josh Allen in a 12-man league, round four, get Josh Allen in round four.
He's not going round four. He's going
I
round
know.
like
There's
one
there's
and
no
two,
shot
you
he
know?
goes round four.
Yeah,
I'm
he
just
doesn't
saying
make,
though.
yeah.
That's what I mean though. So if he falls to you,
What's so let me tell you this. What's the earliest you take Josh Allen? Like absolute like it's end of second round. Are you taking Josh Allen? Like your first pick, you have Christian McCaffrey. It
Mhm.
comes back to you and Josh Allen's on the board. Are you taking Josh Allen?
So if it's a snake draft and you're telling me Christian McCaffrey is obviously going to be the first round pick, and so I'd get a back to back pick, I would go Josh Allen right there.
Okay.
But
So if how about let me ask you this. How about Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes? How about them? Would you touch them or no?
I would touch them. It all look. It all depends on my. So I would not get a
Pause.
quarterback. I would not get a quarterback with my first or second pick. I would get a
Okay.
Josh Allen and a Patrick Mahomes with my third pick for sure if I had a chance.
So
J-
if your first overall pick and it comes back to your wraps, you would take
mhm.
Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes or Josh
I
Allen if they're available.
I personally don't think Hurts, but I would take Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes for sure.
Okay.
Just be yeah. Hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, MFB, you have any thoughts on that? Or
I think that's pretty accurate. I wouldn't just to speak like to your original question about draft strategy, right?
yeah,
Is overall I don't like reaching, right?
yeah,
Like I rather take what falls to me, right? And I rather
yeah.
have other people reach instead, right?
Yeah.
So with that being
That's
said,
good.
right, I'm not gonna be surprised if I see Josh Allen taken late in the second, right?
No,
Right.
But
no.
let's say I'm picking out of the 3 or 4 slot in a draft, 12-man draft, right?
Yeah.
And if I could hit Josh Allen in the third round on the wrap back to me, that's like the perfect sweet spot to take him, if
Yeah,
that makes
not too
sense,
Yeah,
early. It's
I
right?
kind
definitely
of
agree
guys'
with that.
fault
Because
too. Yeah.
it's not like necessarily he fell there, but that's where he is according to rankings, right? Traditional rankings.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds good. MFE, why don't you go ahead and give us your draft strategy for the 2024
Yeah, I
fantasy
think
football year?
overall, kind of like what I said before, like I just don't like reaching, like ever.
Mm.
It's rare if I reach, right? Or it's one of those rounds where people call it like frozen pond or like the dead
Round
round, right?
five,
Like
round
where
six, round
it's like
seven, sort
yeah,
of.
those awkward rounds where it's like, ugh, all these names are kind of you know.
Yeah, they're not that appealing.
Then I'm those are the rounds where I might reach, right?
Right.
Um, but also, like I'm Unk, right? So I have an old school style of
Mhm.
Yeah.
drafting. Like you'll
Yeah.
never see me take kickers defense other than the last two rounds, right? I'm always filling my bench with RBs or receivers and things like that.
Right.
Um,
I
and then as
yeah,
far
go
as
ahead.
draft slot, I think in general, and maybe you guys can share your thoughts after, but I prefer the beginning or the end, right? So like the 1, 2, 3, or the 10, 11, 12. The
Right.
main reason being is like you could predict and form your picks more along the lines of looking at who's on the end, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example, if I'm on the 11 and the guy at 12 like doesn't have a tight end and there's a tight end kind of creeping up, I could take him, right?
True.
Right.
But let's say he has a tight end already. Well, I don't need to take my tight end now. I could wait because I know he's not taking a tight end, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
So
get a
it's
Mhm.
like
better
it
value
just makes
player.
things a little bit easier in the draft, right? Where the
Yeah.
middle, it's like you don't have that luxury. You kind of just gotta.
Right.
It's kind of a war zone in the middle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I agree. Um, uh, BBTB, I know that I think you had a thought about how MFB was saying for the QB, I think there was something that he said that I know you didn't agree with. Do you remember what it was?
I don't know if I mean, the only thing I can think of, I just don't agree with being in the first few picks or being in the last few picks.
Yeah,
I personally think, honestly, the way I've done a few mock drafts, and I think I'm getting the best mock drafts as literally being in between positions 4 through 8.
right.
I think those are the best because you can. I like kind of reaching. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just me personally. I'm kind of a reacher. So like, if I had, let's say, the fifth pick, personally, like I would kind of reach for the guy that I would want.
yeah,
And same thing, like obviously like you're 12, 13, 14 picks away, so you would
yeah,
obviously every single round, so you would kind of reach for your pick that you really want. So
yeah,
and I've won a few I think I've only won a few fantasy leagues being the middle picks. You know what I mean?
right,
I haven't really won it being the first few or the first few last. So
right. I,
yeah.
I think I remember what MFB said that you might not agree with was that he said he's Unk, so he always takes kicker defense at the end. I know that you have a strategy where you take defense or kicker early on. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah. So pretty much, the reason why I would take the defense and kicker a little bit earlier than the last two rounds, I'd probably go in between, like honestly, in between rounds 9 and 11, just just because like I would probably see like the strength of schedule. Like who's
Right.
I look into strength of schedule, and I look at like uh like an offense that's great with pushing the ball but horrible in the red zone. So like if I'm looking for a kicker, like I'm looking for like maybe a Saints kicker.
Right.
I think he's a groupie. Saints are
Right.
great pushing the ball down the field, get in the red zone, and just and then just
Choking when
Derek
he gets
Carr just
there.
becomes Derek Carr. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
So
And then
mhm.
yeah, I think it's a good idea though. Sometimes there's like that idea of, oh, if it's round 9 through 11 or those sorts of rounds where you're just not really sure who to take, if there's a really good defense on the board, it might be a good idea to just take a good defense or a good kicker. You have who's it from the Ravens? Tucker?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
He's like one of the best kickers of all time, right? That gets like broke records like in previous years.
100%.
So So
100%.
I mean, if you just don't know who to take round 9, round 10, round 11, and he's on the board, or Dallas defense, I don't know if they made any changes in the offseason that they're not going to be as strong, but last year they had some crazy games, you know? So
Yeah.
like Dallas defense is good. There's other defenses out there that are good that I would love to talk about, but we can talk about that in another episode or at a later time. But
Hmm.
I think I'll continue on to my draft strategy, and each year I kind of tell myself I'm gonna do, double RB or double, like zero RB or whatever kind of like comes to mind. But I don't think that doing those strategies are a good idea. I think they can help you get away with a win in a league where people just maybe they're not expecting it and they're confused and they don't know that much about football and they're just not sure. But I don't really see a position where taking double RB was going to work for you every single time. There are a lot of good RBs in the first, I would say in the first round. The second round, they start to fall off. I mean, there's Kyron Williams in the second round. And Derrick Henry's there too. I think my strategy is more go with the flow, but I think the difference between my strategy and MFB is that I will reach for a player if I believe in that player. So, and it does depend on your position in the draft. If you're, 10th pick or 11th pick, you don't need to reach as much per se in one of your picks. You can kind of base it off of the players that you're drafting around. Now, when your second pick comes around, you lose that chance because it will be another what like 20 picks or 20 something picks before you get your next pick. So you
Hmm.
you may need to reach. In my opinion, if you know your guy and you have your guy that you know he's going to be a stud this year, I would reach honestly. If I
100%. 100%. I like
if
that. I like that.
Yeah, it just to me depends on who's available and who's on the board. I like the idea of the player falling to you, but if you're in a really good league with really good people that know football and they know fantasy, it's unlikely that a really good player will fall to you. What'll happen usually is that the player that no one wants or everyone's unsure of starts to drop, and it may actually end up working in your favor that that's who ends up kind of in your in your face when you're drafting, and you kind of just have to take a chance on them. But if a lot of people are avoiding him, you kind of get jitters. You're like, wait, is there something wrong with this player? Does he suck? Did something happen in the offseason that I don't know about? So there's all these kind of things that get in your head. But
True.
uh, my draft strategy is mostly to kind of go with the flow and kind of go for my guys. So I think I will create sort of a list of players that I'm looking for and players that I really want and players I do want but not as much, and then players that I just kind of want, and then players that if I end up with them, sure I'll take them. Um, but and
So
then players I just don't want to touch.
yeah, so you're saying like if you do have a chance to get double RB, like if it falls through, or like if you know you're not going to get that second RB later in that
Yeah.
round, so you'll pretty much just reach for him.
I mean, yeah, I just did a mock draft the other day
Hmm.
where I think I had Saquon and I had who was the second RB? I think it was Kyron Williams. And
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, in my opinion, I mean, I if you look at the rankings for fantasy pros, Travis Etienne and Derrick Henry are both ranked above Kyron Williams, but in Yahoo, Kyron Williams is ranked higher. So that's where you have to kind of rank your players, like your RBs. How do you rank your RBs? And at that time, I think during the draft, there weren't a lot of high value wide receivers that I would really want, and it was way too early. I think I was 10th pick. It was way too early for me to grab a QB. So I didn't want to go for Josh Allen. I think Olave was off the board, Marvin Harrison was off the board, Puka's off the board, Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, Amon Ra,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
just all these guys are all off the board. I think Devontae Adams is off the board, so I didn't really want Ayuk. I didn't know if the value is there for him that early in the second round, so I just went for a second RB. So that's just kind of how it worked, and that won't always happen. So you kind of have to be ready for twists and turns, and that's why I mean I know all three of us for sure. We do plenty of mock drafts before the season starts, before the real draft starts. And that's because you just don't know what situation you're going to be in and who's going to take a player right in your face
Mm.
and how you react to that. So, I would highly recommend doing mock drafts, going through the motions and really seeing, if someone takes your guy, what do you do about it? And does it end up making you, do you feel good about your team afterwards, or do you sit there and go, man, I hate my team. I'm so mad that that guy took my player. I wish he didn't take my player. In a real draft, that's going to happen, and you're stuck with that for the year. In a mock draft, you say, all right, trash that one, on to the next. But in a real draft, who knows? Someone might really reach for a player that you really like, and then you're 10 picks later and you're stuck because you don't know what to do. You really wanted that player, so you got to be fluid. You got to do a lot of mock drafts. Um,
You just gotta hope you're not drafting with some goons, man. That's
well,
pretty
that
much it.
and so that's the thing, is that's why I think that being more fluid, being more kind of able to pivot really quickly and having a good ranking list of players that guys that you really want, guys you don't want, things like that is I think it's important, and kind of ranking those players. Do you guys have anything to add for the draft strategy and ways in which it is there a negative to this draft strategy of just going with the flow? Can you get caught off guard really easily and things like that? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you gotta draft a team you're happy with, that you can go home and look at and smile about. You know what I'm saying? Everybody loves their
Yeah.
team when they draft it.
Yeah,
Uh, and that's about it, man. You know?
yeah. I think I
Obviously,
will.
you're probably gonna take some gambles, but you
Right.
gotta see if they pan out.
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
I will say don't get too happy over your team just because you chose them. Because I did that. I mean, I've done that plenty of times. I did it last year where I look at my team, I'm like, yep, I'm happy with my team. But it's because I chose them, so I felt happy about what I chose. But looking back on it at the end of the year, I was like, that team was not, I made some mistakes in the draft. So, um,
Yeah.
the
So,
the oh, go ahead, go ahead.
my fault. What you call it? I was just gonna say, honestly, majority of the time, when you draft your team, you might be either happy or like whatever with your team, but at some point you probably gonna change. You're probably gonna trade like half those players away, either for like a 2-for-1, or if you need some kind of depth because of injuries. So I wouldn't really
Right.
trip over whatever you finished within the draft. See what you could flip, or you know what I mean. Like see what you can get out of it, like in the later weeks that come by. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the draft's the most important. You want to be the one with the power. You want to be the one in control. You
Yeah.
want people to come to you and say, "Oh, I want one of your players. I want your players because you have all you had the best draft and people love like your team." So, draft is very important. Make sure you make rankings and take into consideration our draft strategies and pick which one works best for you. All right, guys, that's going to do it for episode one, part one. Part two will be a separate episode where we'll go over player rankings for the first 24 players in half PPR scoring. Now, these rankings are based on the Fantasy Pros player rankings for half PPR. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys in the next episode.